your girl Miracle Sims, and tonight we're chatting with Miss Genesis Amaris Kemp. We're going to learn more about her and her different endeavors. So, if you all are ready for this conversation, please stay tuned.
Hard to figure out that I'm not the type of girl that goes around and fools around. Think I'm so done with that crazy part of my past. So don't get so bold to ask, 'cause I won't go there. So be aware, yeah. I'm good, but I bet you
Welcome back to God, Sex, and Love, and welcome to Miss Genesis. Hey, how are you?
Hey Miracle, I am doing well and I'm so excited to be chatting with you today.
I'm excited as well. I'm very excited as well. I know I'm not going to tell you all your business, but I'm excited about the things we chatted about before. And yes, welcome. Welcome to God, Sex, and Love.
I just love the spin on your show, GSL, because you're like, what is GSL? And then you see it, God, sex, and love.
Yes, yes. I mean, look, I did not realize it was so controversial until maybe like a year or so in, and then I'm finding out that it's controversial. I'm like, I explain all the time about like the inspiration and stuff, but yeah, I mean, look, ultimately for me, it's just all about incorporating God in every aspect of your life. And so, you know, not say starting with GSL, but I mean, I just like, look, we're going to talk about this stuff too. We talk about everything, but we're going to definitely talk about this stuff too. But yes, we're not here to talk about me and GSL. We're here to talk about you. You and your platform and everything that you have going on. So please, let us know a little bit about you, like where you're from and what you're up to these days, what you got going on.
Amazing. So, for those of you who may not know who I am once again Genesis Amaris Kemp. I am a visionary life coach. I'm also the author of the book Chocolate Drop in Corporate America, From the Pit to the Palace. So, I like to say I'm that firecracker and mindset hacker. And I tell people, yes, I am multifaceted and multidimensional, but don't place me in a box because I wasn't born in a box and I'm not going to be in a box until the good man above calls me home, which is not anytime soon because I still have work here on earth to complete. And I'm just that motivational speaker too, because I believe that just going through life and some of the hell that I went through or the mess, it allowed me to curate my message and my test produce my testimonies. And I say plural because we're always going to be tested in trial, but it's like, how do we become proactive versus reactive, and how do we take what happened to us for us? And that's a part of some of the things that I teach with my clients who come to me for visionary life coaching, because I haven't always been a podcast host, I haven't always been an author or a motivational speaker. I did work for in the corporate world for 15 years, and 12 of those was in oil and gas and energy. So I tell people I'm a human just like you are. So if you're interested in learning more about me, just reach out and let's have a coffee chat style conversation. Don't put me on a pedestal because I'm here just like you are. And I'm just here to, chop it up and, engage in a fun, fluid conversation.
I love that. Look, all those gems and quotes that you just said just now was really good. I like that. So tell me a little bit about, so where are you from?
Oh, my bad. I am from Houston, Texas. So Caribbean descent. My dad was
Mhm.
from Curaçao and my mom is from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And for those of you who don't know, that is close to Jamaica and Barbados and those islands down there. So she is West Indian.
Oh, okay, little island gal, yeah. Awesome. Well, yeah, I want to know more about all of those things that you just shared. I mean, obviously, I can tell that the book you wrote is probably about your 15-year experience in corporate world, right?
Yeah, so the last 7.5, working for a Fortune 500 oil and gas, because I was in oil and gas for 12 years, but 7.5 was where the book was really birthed out of frustration working for the big dogs. And, sometimes it's like you have to lose a piece of yourself in order to find yourself. And it comes to a point where you have to realize who you are and whose you are so you can begin to take ownership and navigate your own career path and your own vehicle.
Mm, yes, yes, yes. I'm kind of wondering now if it's too controversial, then we can be like, let's move on, Miracle. But I'm wondering, as somebody that was in this, corporate side of things when it comes to this oil and gas and whatnot. I know that's a big topic these days. We know that gas is high, and there's a lot of little things that came out about the oil and gas industry. So, how do you feel as somebody that was? I wouldn't say you were exactly part of like the controversy that was sent around it, unless you were. I don't know. I don't know. But like, how do you feel as somebody that was working in that industry? Um,
So being um being in the industry and then being out of the industry, I do see things differently from various vantage points. When I was in the industry right now, I would say, well, it's great that gas prices are high because it does good for the oil and gas market. But from a consumer standpoint, when I'm going to fill up my gas tank, I'm like, man, I'm not going to be driving this far because gas is high. And when I worked for this particular company, which I'm not going to divulge the name because I did a lot of proprietary stuff, they would give us gas cards and they would want us to use the gas cards, and it was a credit card. But me, I'm a Sam's and Costco type of girl. So if I could get my gas cheaper at Sam's and Costco, I'm going there versus paying the name brand price over here because I'm a consumer. And unless you're going to put some more respect on my check, I need to do what's conducive for my pocketbook. I'm just going to be real. And I know some people may get offended that I say that, but you have to see it from both angles. If gas prices are high, then those oil and gas companies could hire more employees and et cetera, and we could help boost the economy. But from a consumer standpoint, how is that affecting people at the pumps, and what can we do to meet the middle ground or et cetera? And now looking from the outside looking in, there's a lot of EVs that's out there now, electric vehicles, and more people are looking for sustainability. They want to reduce carbon emission and carbon footprint and et cetera. But then we really have to look at the pros and cons because there's pros and cons in all areas. And just because some people are switching over to solar, sustainability, electrical vehicle, does not mean that we need to negate oil and gas, because fossil fuels are still fueling some things. And there may be some technological advancements that still need to be ran on fossil fuels. So I feel like I am neutral, and now that I'm no longer in the industry, I see things a little bit clearer from a consumer standpoint and not just from an employee standpoint. So I hope that answers the question without diving into too much controversy.
Yes, yes, I understand. Like again, that's why I was like, I don't know. I know it's too touchy. I was like, I don't know. Should I bring up the pipeline thing? I don't know. Maybe I leave that alone. I'll leave it alone. Oh,
Oh, there's a lot, because a lot of people tell you the Keystone Pipeline, or they're like, you're ruining the earth, or all of this stuff. You hear so much negativity, but I tell people, yes, there's going to be negative chatter and there's going to be positive chatter, but you also have to do your own market research analysis and see, is it true? Is it causable? What are you gaining from it, and etc. Because a pair of lips can say anything, but unless you're actually in the field working on it and you actually see the imprint that's driving an impact, and that could be a positive impact or a negative impact, we need to not only rely on the media but actually do our own research and then formulate our own opinion, because there's so much, especially what's going on with Ukraine and Russia right now, and inflation. This topic is so controversial, and it is a hot topic right now, and I feel like everyone is chiming in, and it's really confusing a lot of people, to be honest, because they're just going with the first thing that they hear and riding it like a wave without even going back and fact checking.
mm, hey, well, look, amen to all of that, man. Yes, I definitely can see that on in a lot of different areas, not just when it comes to this oil and gas situation. But thank you for that inside look at how it was, and I guess your perspective and everything like that. Now that you're not in the industry anymore, so tell me about what the transition looked like from you, working in corporate and then to becoming an author and a podcast host and now a life coach and everything like that. What was that transition like?
So the transition, I would just say it was God led, because had I not been laid off in the middle of a pandemic, I probably would still be in oil and gas, to be honest, because let's be real, when you work in oil and gas, you get compensated very well. You have some really nice perks depending on what company that you're working with. And I was just getting in the position where I was growing my corporate career, where I was getting a little bit more perks and bells and whistles. And all vanity and jokes aside, like when someone asked me, what do you miss the most? I said, I miss my corporate Amex. I miss being able to travel and have perks of traveling. I miss having a car service pick me up at the house and drop me off at the airport. Now, when I go with my family, you got to park the car yourself. You got to get on the bus. You got to go through a terminal. Whereas before, they just pulled me up and let me out. They opened the door, they carry my bags and all of that. But I was like, that's vanity. So I was like, I miss some of the tangible things, but then I do miss, some of the relationships that I build, because whenever I got laid off, I wasn't able to go back and get all of my contact information. So some of the amazing people that I met, like if I didn't grab their contact information, people's contact information is always changing. And I would have loved to maintain those relationships. But so now it's like I'm leveraging social media to try to reach back out to those people, because your network is tied to your net worth. And how the transition happened, to be honest, it was around the time of the pandemic. We all know what happened in 2020 when the market went to negative 37. Oil and gas was not doing good during that. A lot of people lost a lot of money in the stock market and et cetera. It really rocked all industries. Then the pandemic came, and that was a time where a lot of people, no matter what your socioeconomic status was, no matter your race or background, it was the reset period where everyone was forced to into a new normal. Because let's face it, we're not going back to the way things used to be. We are in the new norm, and we're going to move on from the place that we're in now. And what else happened during that time in May of 2020 was when my father got sick. He went to the hospital. He then got paralyzed 3 days after being in the hospital. Later found out that they gave him the wrong medication, so it was medical negligence. And we dealt with this up until November 25th, when my dad passed away unexpectedly in the hospital 8 days after a surgical procedure. And a week later, I found out that I was being laid off from my oil and gas job. And it was so insensitive, because I was like, I just laid my dad to rest a week ago. But I was like, you know what, God, I don't know why you're doing what you're doing, but I'm gonna trust you, even though I was mad as heck. Because I'm not sure if I could curse here, but I was really, like Medea said, I was mad as hell. And then it was like, okay, he's allowing this to happen to me because it has to happen for a reason in order for me to wake up. So that was the first transition period, how I was getting out of oil and gas. But here's the but, y'all. I was forced to work up until February of 2021, because I was working on a proprietary project that I was the only one working on that project for 3.5 years. So if I left right when they told me I was going to be laid off, all of that knowledge would have walked out of the door. So they needed me to offboard that information to someone else, which didn't make sense to me, because I was like, if my position is being eliminated, why do I need to offload this information to somebody else? Because I'm thinking in my mind, when a position gets eliminated, that means the job is no longer going to be there. Does that make sense, Miracle? Would you say the same thing from your end?
Yeah, I mean, either that or, again, maybe the things that you were working on weren't as important or something along those lines to, for there to be some reason to let you go. Right.
Exactly. And the kicker was, I have a supply chain degree and I was working in global supply chain. So I'm like, we all know what's happening with supply chain, but my role was niche. I was working specifically on trade regulations and compliance coordination for a commodity. And I'm just going to say that high level without going into the granular details for proprietary reasons. So I was like, this don't make no sense. It did not make sense in the natural, but I know we serve a supernatural God who has Chronos time, which is chronological timing, which is our time here on earth, and logical. Then he has Kairos timing, which is God's appointed timing. Because if he doesn't force things to happen for us, we're going to stay in a period where we're complacent and we're comfortable because of it's conducive. So this is building up into the transition. So February 2021 comes. And that's the final day. It was the last day on payroll. I think it was February 14th, Valentine's Day. And the reason why it made it sweeter for me to stay, even though I didn't want to, was because I would be leaving money on the table. Because if I would have left before that, I wouldn't have got a severance package. I wouldn't have got my vacation time paid for me. And at the time, that company had a pension. And for those of you who aren't aware of what a pension is, it's pretty much like free money that you're getting in addition to a 401k. So it was like, I had my 401k, but then I got this pension and I was fully vested. So I was like, I want all my coins. As the secular singer would say, oh, like, and so I had to be really strategic there. And it wasn't until that fully happened that I really started to talk about more of the things that I was doing on the side. Because I had already had my book that came out, Chocolate Drop in Corporate America, but I allowed the layoff to fuel me to just do more promotion around the book. Because when my book came out, it was May 2020. And in that same time, I couldn't really celebrate my book launching because I was dealing with my father in the hospital and what happened to him. And I couldn't really celebrate because then the people that identify as the Black and Brown community, some people say the Blacks, the African Americans, or whatever, the minorities, we were just facing what happened with George Floyd, and the Black Lives Matter movement was jumping off. So whenever I saw someone that looked like me get killed on national TV, that does something to you. And you begin to question. You have a point of reflection and a wake-up call. And I'm gonna pause there in case you want to ask any questions before I continue, Miracle.
Oh goodness. Well, first I want to say I'm so sorry to hear about your father and everything. I mean, I hate to hear about the negligence, and then I'm sorry to hear that he passed and everything as well. So I definitely wanted to state that. Um, I, I'm caught in between because on one hand it's like I know that things happen for a reason, and even though we don't fully understand it at the time, it's one of those things where this thing pushed you into your greatness of your own things, right? But then at the same time, when you do work for a company and you do add value and all these different things, I've been there too. I wonder, like, well, why didn't this go? Like, why am I not getting promoted right now? Why am I being let go? Or, things like that. And so, um, I mean, I don't know if you want to talk about like how you felt when they did that, because at the same time too, they let you go months prior to when they actually let you go. Like that's crazy too. Like I I don't think I've ever encountered personally anything like that where someone, with a company like let me go, but then I had to stay to pretty much, I guess, train somebody else, right? Now maybe I was in situations like that, but maybe I didn't know, and
Mhm.
then it just ended up being like I was training someone, and then next thing I know, I was let go, right? I've been in a situation like that, but they let you know up front, like months in advance, like, hey, you know,
Yeah.
we're gonna let you go. But hey, we need you to stay on and finish that project you're working on because apparently that's very important. You know what I mean? So it's like, uh,
Yeah, I could share because it literally felt like a slap in the face. It felt like I was being used and abused. It felt like I was taken for granted.
mm,
And before that happened, I really thought everything was turning around for me. I really thought it was my breakthrough season. And the reason why I felt like it was my breakthrough season, because as I mentioned, during that time, the George Floyd incident happened in May. In May, we get a call from the vice president to talk about um, what our views were with racism. And mind you, he only called those of us that identified as Blacks or African Americans because he was put in a position where companies wanted to do more about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, because there were other companies that were talking about what they were doing with their initiative. So me being smart-minded and really analytical, I was like, I'm not going to be the first one to raise my hand and volunteer because you don't know how that's going to go. So I always remember how my dad always told me they could lead you to the water, but they can't make you drink. Or you need to handle people with the long handle wooden spoon. And I didn't understand that until I got older. So whenever he called on me to share my story, he's like, "Can you tell me a story of when you, if you've experienced racism personally or professionally?" And I'm like, where do I begin? Because the rap sheet was long. So I'm just going to be condensed here so it could paint you a picture. So it's closing some of the gaps you may have, Miracle. So I shared a story. I said, personally, I have an issue when I'm going in the grocery store and a Caucasian woman followed me around the grocery store because I was with my sister's kids who are half white. And she didn't think I was responsible for those kids. So she came on over there, asked my niece and nephew if they were okay, as if they looked like they were in harm. And I said, I have a problem with that because the area I live in is predominantly Caucasian. And, that could have easily gone south based on what was already happening in society if I would have answered in a different manner. That was the one example. I said, the other part is when my brother's kids, and primarily my nephew, tells me that someone didn't want to play with him because he was pink, I have a problem with that. And at first I busted out laughing because I said, "What is pink?" And that's when their parents were teaching a 5, 6 year old that you couldn't play with someone who was non-white because of the color of their skin. And I'm like, if you're teaching a kid that at 5, 6 years old, how is that kid going to be when that kid grows? So it broke my heart because when I grew up, you played with everybody. Kids didn't really see color. We were just happy to be on the playground, enjoying recess, enjoying our time. Then I said, professionally, here's my story. I started in this company in 2013 as an administrative assistant, coming from a smaller company where I left a manager role. So that was already a slap in the face. Fast forwarding, I changed my entire degree plan to compensate the company. I went from being a psychology major for 2 years to supply chain and logistics and technology. Yes, you all paid for some of my degree, but then I had to wait 4.5 years as an admin with after get yeah, I had to wait 4.5 years as an administrative assistant. Then I graduated after that because I went to school at night while working full time. Once I got my degree, you made me jump through hoops because you said just because you have a degree doesn't mean you're going to move out of this role. Whereas someone who was non-melanated, she got her degree from the same university, tier one, and she quickly moved out of the admin bucket to be an engineer. So, what's the difference between myself and her? So I'm gonna let that one marinate. And then I said, fast forwarding, my first professional role, I was forced to drive 2 hours one way to work and 2 hours home. So I was commuting a total of 4 hours a day. And all I got salary treatment wise with a degree was $1,000. But someone else got a big jump. Then here we are, me doing this proprietary role. It was the first role that the company created, so I didn't have a predecessor. I had to learn everything about that role from the ground up and make it what it was, which was the last role I was in before I got laid off. And after I said all of that, and that's just the cliff notes of the story. 1 week after me speaking up, I got a $20,000 salary increase. And they bumped my classification level from a 15 to a 22. So you could see the pay disparity there and see how much I was underpaid to my colleagues that were already in my team. And mind you, I was the only woman of color on my team at that time and the only one with a different classification level. And I didn't find that out until I was leading a global meeting. And when they showed how my colleagues' pay structure was, they started off at a level 22 and higher. And here I was working on this team, doing the same work as a CL 15. So you tell me, if that wasn't, oh Lord Jesus, help me so I don't curse. You tell me how that makes it look.
Mhm.
So you could see how the tide was turning, right? And it felt like my walls were coming down because 7 is the number of completion. So I was like, I've been here for 7 years. So now I really, and that's why I said I felt like it was my breakthrough. So when I got laid off, I was like, this don't make no sense. 7 is the number of completions. I just got this $20,000 salary increase and a bump in my classification levels, and I'm doing good. So then fast forwarding months later, when I found out I was going to be laid off, I'm like, this don't make no sense at all. So does that help you answer your question you had, Miracle?
Yes, ma'am. I do appreciate you, shedding a little bit more light on like what you were going through with that. Uh, I'm sorry you went through that. But at the same time, well, let's talk about the great things that came from it, right? Let's talk about,
The
what
book.
came from this sudden move. All right.
Can you see
Oh,
it?
yes.
Sorry, my ring
I
light.
saw, yeah, I saw it better earlier, but there it is. Okay. Oh, no, it disappeared now. um, yeah, it has a little glare on it, but we can
I
see
have
it.
a ring light over me.
Yeah, it's okay. So the book came from it. Like, what else came from your
So
move?
the book came from it, speaking engagements. So I had a challenge for myself when the book came out. I think I was 29 then. So I was like, I want to do 29 podcasts, and I just pulled it out the air because I was like, 29. I think I was 28 turning 29. And I said, I'm gonna do 29 podcasts. Then I had surpassed that. Then I was like, oh, this is nice. So then I started doing more podcasts. Then a few magazines reached out to me because they wanted to feature my story. So I've been in The Voyage, I've been in Pretty Women Hustles, and some other magazines, and etc. And I was like, had it not been for what I went through, I wouldn't have done the podcast, which gave me exposure, and the magazine articles wouldn't have came. So that's amazing. So then I really just started to get out there and embrace the power of my voice and the power of my story. Because whenever you are conditioned so long by a work culture and an environment, you begin to water down who you are because you're trying to appease and seek validation from other people who weren't meant to be with you on the lifelong journey. So then I had to start doing my introspective and my self-reflection and asking, who is Genesis? How does Genesis show up? How does Genesis want to be perceived? Because I was tired of people making assumptions and saying, oh, she's Black, or she's this, or putting labels on me. Because I know that I'm a child of God. I know that God created me for a purpose. Now it's up to me to not bury my talents, but ignite my talents. Because I saw what happened in the Bible when the guy buried his talents because he was afraid, but the other ones took their talents and they went and they magnified their talents and they multiply it. So I was like, I want the multiplication. So if God is allowing this to happen to me, then he's going to allow it to happen for me. And if I say that I love God the way that I say I do, then I need to be obedient. I need to stop being disobedient, because every time I'm disobedient, it's like I'm going through another test and a trial. And I was like, I'm tired of walking around this mountain, y'all. I'm tired.
Mm.
I was like, I need the walls to fall down like right now. And it was that point where I just had to get real with God. I was like, I was angry. I was mad. I was talking to God like I was talking to you, Miracle. And what really set off the anger was losing my dad. My dad and I were super close. He was like my best friend. Then the second part of the anger came when I lost my job, so my source of income. But I thank God I had a husband who's my bohab, my creme de la creme, my rib to fall back on and to keep me uplifted. But then after that, y'all, what came next? I was cruising along. Boom, another bump in the road. You know what that bump was, Miracle?
What?
My grandmother passed. My dad's mom, 9 months and 5 days to the date of my dad's passing. So I had to relive my dad's death all over again because she wanted to be buried at my dad's feet. So when we went to the cemetery, I saw my dad laying there and I felt hurt again, all over again.
Mm,
Then I had to pick myself back up because it was a different type of hurt and a different type of grief. So that was 3 things that happened right there.
mm,
But I'm trying to continue to encourage people because it's not just about Genesis, but it's about the imprint that I'm making in order to drive an impact so I could be a world changer for other people. Because if I light up, then my light could help light someone else's light up. So we could have, that chain reaction.
yeah.
So I'm starting to feel good again. I'm getting pumped up, doing my work, Miracle.
Mhm,
And I'm going to just say, rolling with the homies, cruising down the road. Then
mhm.
bam, hit that pothole again. I was like, for real, Jesus, you playing with me now. Guess what happened now, Miracle?
I don't know, sis. I don't know. What happened?
My other grandmother passed, my mom's mom.
Mm,
She was 99 years old, and I wasn't going to go to the Caribbean because at that point, I had just found out that I was pregnant. So I was a little over 2 months pregnant, and my grandmother lived in the Caribbean. But let me tell you how God works. Because it was the first time that my husband met some of my family in the Caribbean that was not able to travel for our wedding.
mm,
And we've been together for 7 years, dated for 3, married a little over 4. So it was significant because I knew my grandmother was getting up there in age, being 99. And I was like, we gotta go. We gotta go. So I pressed my way, and money was tight because I was laid off, and all we were living off of was my husband's salary. Oh, and the other pothole was my husband lost his job too. My husband was an executive chef by trade. So by that point, we're living off of savings, y'all. And I'm telling you, your faith is tested. It really is.
mhm.
So we pushed our way to go to the Caribbean. When we got back to the US in January, we found out that my grandmother passed. So that was the 4th loss. Dad, job, grandma, and other grandma. 4 losses back to back, a year and a half. But I could say this, where I am now is not where I was, but how I sustained it was the grace of God, the mercy, faith, and really remembering if God did it for me back then, he could still do it for me now.
Mhm.
Was I mad? Yes. Was I angry? Yes. Was I tired? Hell yes. Was I questioning God? No doubt. I'm human. Did I question God? Yeah.
Mhm.
But what did I learn from it? And how am I taking the lessons that I learned from each incident and packaging them up so I can help somebody else? Because how can I tell somebody about being a visionary life coach if I never experienced life? How could I help somebody navigate their corporate career if I didn't navigate my own, not once, but twice
Mhm.
out of 12 years working in oil and gas? How can I tell somebody how to deal with grief if I never dealt with different types of grief? Because grief, you could have grief from the loss of a loved one, you could have grief from the loss of a job, a pet, a friend. There's different types of grief, and everyone mourns differently. But how do you overcome grief? Whether it's music therapy, whether it's talking to an actual therapist, because let's be real, both of us are melanated. People in our community don't want to go to therapists. They don't want people in their business.
Mm,
But if you need to go seek that professional help, then do that because it's not about everybody else, but it's about you. You getting free and you getting over that hurdles. How did I do that? Journaling. Sometimes I need to get my thoughts out of my head onto paper and reflect on what I wrote down.
mhm.
And crying. Some days I just need to cry, even though people are saying he's gone and he's not coming back. Crying for me was therapeutic. It wasn't a sign of weakness, it was a sign of strength. So I can get out what I needed. Do I still cry when I think about my dad? Hell yes. I cried today on my own podcast show when someone told me about her journey being in a wheelchair. And I thought about how my father went through medical negligence and he was in a wheelchair, and how people were making assumptions because he was in a wheelchair. They started to treat him differently. You didn't treat him differently when he was walking, but now you're treating him differently now that he's in a wheelchair.
Mm, mm,
So I tell people, even though I'm in my early 30s, I have experienced life, and that those experiences, you can't take that away from me. And I'm not everybody's visionary life coach, but I am somebody's. And I'm gonna fight with you, but we're gonna do it as a partnership. because I need you to get out of that rut, boo. I need you to do what you need to do in order for you to be whole and complete. So you're not sleeping on your dreams, but you're turning them into realities and you're activating your mission on earth. Because I truly believe each one of us was placed here for a reason. We were created on purpose, for purpose, but it's up to you to ignite it.
Yes. Yes. Wow. I mean, you have such a powerful testimony. Thank you so much for sharing it. And yeah, you definitely have given us many things to grab onto today and everything like that. Goodness, man, I'm just over here. Ooh, all right. Well, I do want you to tell me a little bit about your podcast and what was the inspiration for you starting it? You went from visiting 30 Soul podcast to having one. So what was that transition? How did you get into podcasting? Tell me about that.
I got into podcasting after I was hosting different podcasts for 3 different CEOs simultaneously via this company that I was working with because I wanted some cash. I'm gonna be real, things were tight. And then I said, man, if I could do it for CEOs, I could do it for myself. I didn't necessarily know how I was going to do it for myself because I was just the host for their shows. I didn't have to do any editing because they had a team of editors that they paid or anything like that. And they would tell me the questions they wanted me to ask their guests. But since I was very good at talking with people and just summarizing and bringing things together, I was like, you know what? I'm doing that for somebody else. I want to do it for myself. And how I started my podcast, to just be honest, was just out of my grief journey of dealing with the loss of my dad, because I got tired of people telling me, I know how you feel. When I was like, but you don't, because both of your parents are still living. So when you bury somebody, when you bury a parent or you cremate that parent, then come talk to me and tell me how you feel, because you don't know how I feel. Or I got tired of people saying, especially some of the religious and church people in my life, well, baby, he's in a better place. The Lord give it and the Lord take it away. Because I had questions, because I said, well, does God really make his people suffer? I know Jesus suffered, but I felt like my dad died before his time. There's questions that I still have, questions that still have no answers for it, but it will be up to God to reveal it in his time, not mine. So I got tired of that. So what I did was, I'm gonna be real, I got out my phone, y'all. I went to anchor.fm and I started to just talk into the mic. And I didn't know how me just being real, raw, and vulnerable was helping so many people who did lose a loved one. And then people started reaching out to me to be on the show. At that point, I was like, I don't have all the equipment, because I didn't have all the fancy stuff like when I was working for the CEOs, because they interview people 6-7 figures, so they have the money to pay all the other stuff. So I was like, okay. And so I challenged myself. And it was when I was in the right mindset, Miracle, that I began to start interviewing people. Because had I done it before I was ready, I don't think I would have had the success where my podcast is ranked in the top 2% right now globally out of 2.8 million per listennotes.com, which is where you get the metrics to see all the podcasts out there and how you rank out. So it was definitely a passion project. It was birthed out of grief. And it was just a way for me to keep my dad's legacy alive. And then the other part of my show, the reason why it's called Gems is because I truly believe we all have some gems to share. And gems, you don't just find it at the surface. You have to go below the surface in order to find those precious gems, kind of like oil and gas. We have to frack for it. We have to drill for it. We have to do other things in order for the substance to arise. So I'm so tired of people on social media placating and you doing all this stuff to make them seem good, but why can't we just be us naturally? Why do we have to play up ourselves? So I was like, I just want to have a real conversation, coffee chat with somebody, chop it up, and get to know them beyond where they are, beyond the pedestal, because so many people put people on the pedestal, but they never ask about the star uglies. They never ask about the test and how they got to the testimony. So that's one of the things I like to do on my show. And then I came up with the pillars, because so many people were telling me, you should niche down, you should niche down. And I was like, just because other people are doing it doesn't mean that I need to do it. Yes, I see the incredible success of other podcasters, but I'm not trying to be the next Joe Rogan. I'm not trying to be the next Brene Brown. I'm just trying to be Genesis Amaris Kemp. So I said, you know what? I'm not going to niche, but I'm going to make my podcast based on pillars, which is to educate, inspire, or motivate, while also weaving in diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. So I have people from all walks of life that come on the podcast, but as long as they could give some value based on the 3 core pillars, I want to talk to them, because that's how I'm making sure the content is diverse. That's how I'm making sure people are seen and heard based on inclusivity. That's how I'm making sure the playing field is equitable. Yes, I've had people on there who make millions of dollars in real estate, and I've had other people who are just starting out their journey in entrepreneurship. The playing field is level, because just because you may be here or you may be there in a different socioeconomic status, you have some gems and some values to add. And belonging is making sure that everybody has a place. And yes, I know it's broad, but it works for me and it works for the guests that are drawn to my community.
Well, I love it. I love it. I commend you. I thank you so much for sharing your journey with us on today. Please let us know, where can we find you and everything that you have going on.
So you can head on over to my website, which is my name, Genesis Amaris Kemp. It's on the screen. And for those of you who cannot see the screen, I'm going to spell it. So it's GenesisAmarisKemp.net. And when you go on my website, there are some freebies for your listeners. If you click on the book tab, you'll get the first chapter of my book for free. So you'll get a little taste of Chocolate Drop in Corporate America, from the pit to the palace. I have a podcast tab, so you can see the podcast episodes that I've done on my show, as well as some of the features that I've been on for other people's show. The third tab is my radio tab. I do run an internet-based radio show once a month that I do with WBNN on Blog Talk Radio under Ngozi Time. So we broadcast out of Lagos, but we get anywhere from 13 million and up listeners. And I really like the community because it's different hosts from different backgrounds. And then the last tab is my features and merchandise tab, where you'll find 2 more freebies. So I have a health and wellness business. So the first one is a health assessment. And the reason why I'm promoting health is because what good is having wealth if you don't have quality of health to enjoy the wealth that you acquired? And the second one is a product, which is the Kiani Sunrise product. It is a superfood, super nutrients pack that you could rip open and take on the go. Because some people, let's be real, you're not getting all your fruits and veggies in, and you may not necessarily want to take vitamin supplements. So why not drink this drink to make sure that your body is performing optimally and you're getting in the proper nutrition? And then with me being in oil and gas, I've switched over to solar, because shoot, if the sun could power my house and I could reduce electricity costs and et cetera, I'm gonna do that, because I'm here to save money, because inflation is real, y'all, and things are getting high out here in these streets. So tap in and you can see the things that I have going on. And all my information is on one spot, just different tabs on my website.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Genesis. I appreciate you stopping by. Is there anything else you want to share with us before you go?
If you want to be coached by me, reach out. That's on my website as well. And if not, I'll drop my email, which is genesisamariskemp@gmail.com. Just put interested in coaching in the subject line, so I know you're interested in partnering and me being your visionary life coach. And we could talk about payments, how I like to do my pay structure, and etc., because I'm here for you to level up in the game.
Awesome. Thank you so much for visiting us. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Miracle. Thank you for having me.
Miracle Sam's, let's go.
I'm good, but I bet you wish that I would have a one-night affair. But I won't go where you wish I could, 'cause right now you're looking so good. That's right. But is it worth the chance to leave a moment there? No, you see what I'm about.
Thank you so much for watching God, Sex, and Love. And thank you to Miss Genesis for joining us tonight. I hope that you all enjoyed it. Check out her endeavors, her book, her podcast. And yes, if you're interested in her life coaching services, check that out as well. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Good night.